Hi, I'm RK Russell, former NFL player, writer, advocate, and author of the memoir, The Arts Between Us. I was the first NFL player to come out as bisexual back in August 2019, which really set me on a journey of sharing my story, sharing my truth, and trying to just shed light on topics that aren't normally talked about, whether it be masculinity, manhood, sports culture, LGBTQ plus involvement in sports, and mental health, of course. So dedicated my life to that, been blessed and fortunate to have great opportunities like this to talk and to share and to hopefully give voice to the voiceless and light to those shrouded in some darkness.
And you've done that and so much more. And again, you inspire me as a human being, but also as a teacher. And hope you don't mind, but we are going to go way back. I am going to take you back to school, literally. So, I mean, I have a lot of teacher questions that I'd like to ask, and I'm always very
Yeah.
curious. Some of them you answered for me already, but it'd be nice to share with other people as well. What type of student were you? So, if I were to have you in class, what type of student were you? How would your teachers describe you?
Everyone knew that I was a bright kid, I was an intelligent kid, I did the work, but I also kind of like did just enough. There were times where I underachieved a bit, I can't lie. But I think for me specifically, keeping my interest was a big thing. Teachers are already tasked with so much, so to keep the interest of like 20, 30, I don't know, classrooms are growing out kids, it's a difficult one. But if it was something I was passionate about, something I was into, I was 110% in.
And again, I can relate to it's tough for me to get mad at my students for doing things that I would have done. You give me history in certain classes, you put me in calculus and science, I will not be your model student, man. Definitely not.
No, history, I mean, because the history, it doesn't change. It's like we learned it. I learned it. I feel like I got the highlights. I'm
Yeah.
just like, let's move forward.
So now focusing on teachers. Uh, what teacher gave you the most opportunity to be creative in class? And what do you think, what teacher kind of brought out the best in you? And why did that happen, do you think?
The first teacher that comes to mind is Mrs. Reynolds. She was my third grade English teacher. And I think it was the first time where I realized that writing, specifically in literature, wasn't just about reading someone else's story or trying to put myself in the shoes of someone else. It was really about telling my story. It was about connecting with the things that either felt true to me or vivid to me or like honest or like visceral in some way, sharing those and broadening your horizons as well. I mean, just because a story isn't technically about you doesn't mean that you can't learn from it. Doesn't mean that we don't all share similarities, just being human beings on this big, beautiful earth together. So it really opened my mind. I think she's the first teacher that showed me that education wasn't just about passing tests and doing homework, but it was really about understanding where you fit in the world. And how the world kind of moves, the things you want to even change about it, essentially. So definitely a lot at such a young age. And at the very end of it, she at least made me excited to write and to share my story, which is something I still do to this day.
That's amazing. I'm going to ask you to share a story about her when I see you for the My Favorite Teacher campaign and this week as well. But have you reached out to her? Have you ever sent her a copy of her book, or is that something I could help arrange and track her down?
I definitely would need help
I will help you. I will.
figuring it out.
Yeah, and I know I'm because you went to school in Texas, correct? You grew up in
Yes.
Texas. Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
I will find her. I will find the school. I will get in contact, and we'll somehow make that happen. So, just hearing you say that, it would probably mean the world to her to know that she had an impact in you at such an early age as well. How can teachers inspire students? How can they get the most out of them? How can they get them to believe in themselves when sometimes they don't? And that's my most difficult task as an educator. How can I get that creativity out of them?
Oh my gosh. I got to start by saying I don't know the challenges of being a teacher. I can only imagine the demands, from state curriculum of each student, the scarcity and resource. Like I understand that it is a hard job. I think for me in being a student, there was a lot of times as a young person where you're talked to, where in some way someone is trying to educate you, or at least that's how you view it. And I think it was those moments where teachers took the time to like listen to what I was saying, to understand my experience, and then somehow incorporate that or put that in the lesson, or at least put it in terms that felt real to me in my everyday situation, I think was a huge benefit. Like I said, talking about even just literature, showing that I'm not just reading someone else's story. You can read someone's story that's just like you can learn from something, you can tell your own story. Just like somehow incorporating it in the life of the student. And the life of students as large, because also as young people, we're all going through very similar things as human beings in general. we're all going through very similar things. So I think just grounding it in what students are going through, what they're interested in, and making it in some way applicable or at least remnant to that is a huge thing. You know, a lot of young people, I feel like, lose interest because we just think that this is just something we have to do at a certain time of the day, get through it, and then it doesn't go with us outside the classroom. And that's just not true.
No, and I agree. As a teacher, my whole goal is to have students make that connection. And it's
Mm.
funny because I love history. I didn't love the facts about history. I loved the stories and the people who made it up. And as a teacher, I slowly kind of shifted to that point where I teach less facts, more stories, which also include facts. And
Yeah.
I'm so much more inclusive when it comes to what I teach. You know, I teach about LGBTQ figures throughout history. I teach about figures of color and women and marginalized groups that normally are left out in our textbooks. And
Yeah.
again, I would often say I teach, you know, white male history to students of color and girls because
Mm.
that's how textbooks are shaped. And it's like I couldn't take interest in something that didn't make a connection to me. So why should I expect my students to? But
Yeah.
it's one of the things that I've slowly kind of evolved. More stories change people's lives more than information, and stories are relatable. And I don't
Yeah.
think people, especially people who teach history, probably utilize that skill set. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. It's great to know facts, but it's more impactful to know experiences, to feel experiences in people. I agree 1,000%.
It's the human history. Like stories help open minds of other people and other groups. When you hear, if you're a person, heterosexual person, you hear a story about how LGBTQ people contributed, it lets you know we're all in this. It lets
Yes.
same thing. It's so inclusive, but I also feel like it teaches so much empathy too when
Yeah.
you tell stories. Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to get to something I know you're an expert on, and that's branding. And I talk to branding with my students a lot as they write
Mm,
their resumes, as they kind of shape who they are. And I think I think schools should offer branding and marketing classes for students.
for
What
sure.
are the similarities? Before I get into the branding aspect, I want to kind of tie football in as well.
Mm.
What are some of the similarities and differences between pro football and would you say like education and teaching? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this because your
Similarly.
football it's an educational process.
Yeah, I mean, you're constantly learning on the field. A lot of the times, also in sport, you're learning as it's going. Same in education, you know, information is always evolving, depending on especially what specialty you're in or what course you're in. Education is always changing. We're always learning more. We're always finding better ways to do different things. Same's with football. You know, it looks a lot similar, but people are playing it a lot differently, or we're training differently. We're training our bodies differently to do things that have been done 100 times. But how do we make it faster? How do we, lessen the impact on us? I think it's the same with education. I have nieces and nephews now who are doing math a way that I never did math before, but
Me
they are
neither.
doing it
Me
so much
neither.
faster. I'm like, if it works for you, if that's how you learn best, if it's efficient, then go for it. I think it's the same. I think football evolves, education evolves, but the same things I say the same are learning the tools, how to do it, learning new tools when they surface, and being able to apply it in real time as you go.
You made a great point too. The game of football is different now than it was 50 years ago. In some cases, education is the same as it was 50 years ago. That's
Mm.
not acceptable. You know,
Yeah,
we have to adapt and we have to grow and we have to like reevaluate the whole method of how we do it. So that was a great example you made. So
thank you.
back to the branding aspect. How does your personal brand, like how did the brand you kind of came to, obviously with football and with your advocacy work, inspire the way you work and the projects that you kind of choose to work on?
I mean, it's everything. I know a lot of corporations and everyone look at it as branding. And when I, talking in these meetings, I use that word too. But for me, really, this is my legacy. Like I'm not going to be on this earth a long time. I'm also not going to be in everyone's home or able to sit down and have a meal and a conversation with everyone. There are simple moments where you get to be introduced to someone, where you get to make an impression, where you get to make an impact, where you get to join a collaboration or a partnership. And you don't know where that's going to reach. You don't know when it's going to reach, but it's like, what is that message? What is it rooted in? What are you trying to get from it personally? What are you trying to give to the world? And is it on brand? Is it in line with your legacy? If this is the only thing someone ever sees of me, or if this is the only piece of writing anyone reads from me, or the only snippet they get, does it say what I want it to say? Does it say who I am? Does it say who I stand for in some way? Is it making the world better for other people in some way? I look at it as like, this is my legacy. This is who I will be, in these moments, in these seconds you get to see me, or long after I'm gone. So it's very important to me. I also love to have fun. I think a lot of the times, especially being an LGBTQ plus person and a person of color, there's so much negative out there, rightfully so, and we're attacking it. But it's like, it's also important to see people like me have fun, enjoy what we do. So I always try to find a good mix of excitement, of positivity, of enjoyment, and of having a message, that is in line with how I feel, my morals, my values, and hopefully what I choose, to better the world with. Like, I'm trying to leave it a better place than I got it. I know so many countless people have done that for me, and I'm trying to just return that favor.
Well, I mean, it's leads me to my next question about how important is it to unify your personal values with your brand? Because I'm a teacher. That is my lane. That's what I know to speak about. That's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
You can tell if I was talking about something or discussing something that I'm not only familiar with, but just not passionate about. So how important is it for people to align their professional brand with their personal values?
I think it's very important. I will take a step back to say that I speak from a place of privilege with this, because the things that I have been passionate to do, like play football and to have these creative endeavors, these advocacy endeavors, are also things that have paid me very well and that compensate me. So I will say that there are a lot of people who aren't able to operate from that place, that have to do things to make money because bills are coming, and they have to provide. So I definitely always want to take note of that first. And if you're in that place, then I completely understand. If an opportunity arises, or you even have, whether it be the security or the financial security, to kind of make a shift to aligning the two things, I believe it is really vital. We talk about the hierarchy of needs, and once you get, the essential security, the food, all of these things, and you get to actualization, I think it is almost impossible for me personally to be completely in peace and completely enjoy if my work is not also aligned in those things, or not also aligned with my values. When we work with organizations now, whether it be a one-off event or something as simple as an Instagram post, we try to look at the values. Are they in line with what we're doing? We all have a history, but what is the plan moving forward? How do we implement it? Are we being used as tokens, or are we really being brought in as collaborators? I sleep better at night knowing that all the things that I do have that intention in them, in that align. I don't ever want to put anything out there that will hurt someone else, or unknowingly cause someone harm. And if I do, I work tirelessly to correct that. And it's super, super valuable for me. I think it's hard for me to try to be the best brother, the best partner, the best son, the best, hopefully, father and husband one day, without also being the best human being to other people. And what you do for work and how you earn money, I think, really contributes to that.
Again, I feel like I'm in school now because you're not only just obviously reiterating so many things that I genuinely believe, but you're making me reevaluate how I do things as a person as well, and how it reflects. Because again, it's tough to separate your personal brand from the person you are, because they are one and the same. And
Yeah.
it's a very kind of blurred area. So yeah, you definitely make me rethink a lot of things, and kind of reevaluate to my mission. But what I mentioned before about teaching students about branding, why do you think it's important to teach students about not only branding, but just working on that mission, finding something they're passionate about, or finding something that, stirs their creative juices? Like, why is it so important to kind of teach students these skills now?
Because there's passion and purpose. Like, I truly feel, even with football, once I really got into the space of advocacy, in the space of talking for people, and sharing my story, and also sharing my art, there was a joy in my life that I hadn't experienced before, playing a game, even a game that I love so much. So I really feel like purpose is the light of your life. And a lot of time is spent finding that purpose. The purpose does change as well as you go through life, and that's fine. But, I think as young people as well, you're told to build this future, and to work for this future, and to do, to kind of do things the hard way now so they're easier later. If that's not rooted in purpose, or at least in finding that purpose, it will seem so much more laborious, so much more, a struggle, so much more mundane, or you'll work really hard at something that you actually don't want, or it just isn't good for you as a human being, as a soul. So it's important. I feel like a lot of youth should be spent trying to just figure out what you enjoy, what you like, and what you're passionate about. And for me personally, how you can make the world a better place than you left it. And that sounds so huge for a lot of people, and for me as well. It's not always that big. Sometimes it's just about giving back to the mother that sacrificed for you, or giving back to a brother or a teammate or a peer or your community or your school. This doesn't have to be huge ground share shattering things. Change and purpose a lot of times comes in the details.
And it's on a small scale. You can't help everyone, but you could help anyone. And that's what it comes down to too. And I think a lot of people get so overwhelmed with that, not realizing that to me, it could be very local, the acts of service and the things you contribute to and the things you change. How has this journey down kind of the whole branding aspect, finding your role as an advocate, finding your role as a writer, sharing your story, how has that helped you self-reflect? Because I feel like a lot of times when you go down these paths, it makes you look back in the mirror at yourself and change, but also grow immensely as a person. Especially when you have a mission, then it's like, all right, I have a mission now.
Oh, definitely. I mean, trust me, I have a mission, but I'm also still living the mission. Like, the work is still being done. The plane is still being built as we're flying it. And that is just the beauty of being a human. That is the human experience. But honestly, it motivates me to get up every day and to work at it for me, to work at it for everyone else, to work at myself. I think it's a huge blessing to be able to reflect and to see yourself with grace, with mercy, and with love, but also just to be critical at times, without being detrimental to yourself, and to make sure that you're building the life that you want. It's all about me learning. It's also about me going and growing and expanding.
My students are amazing human beings, but I see some of them battle with self-acceptance and self-esteem and kind of self-reflection a lot of times. And they don't seem confident a lot of times. I have students who are extremely confident. I have students who aren't confident at all and trying to build that confidence. What could educators do to help students find that place of acceptance and then help push them over, like you said, to actualizations? Because I think a lot of students live in survival mode. They are low on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. To get them to actualization, like, what do you think educators can do to help students build those confidence, build their brand, build their identity, and build their self-acceptance?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think a lot of educators are doing it. They're making, they're attempting to make safe places, and at the very least, intentional places, for kids to show up as themselves, to be heard and to be listened to. Of course, legislation in a lot of areas is making that difficult for a lot of educators. But I think that's the first thing. Like, we talk about the hierarchy of needs. You need to feel safe. You need to feel provided for. Kids are dependents at the end of the day. They depend on adults, not just their parents. They depend on all adults. Really, it really does take a community to make sure that you can get a kid first out of that survival mode. Safety, a shoulder to cry on, an ear that listens. These are all vital things. And for a lot of us, teachers are our first safe haven. A lot of us come from homes that do not provide that. So I think that's a huge part of it. And also making sure that we're defining success in a way that is attainable, that is understandable, that is rooted in your own individual goals and what those could be. Not even knowing that at such a young age, but just what those could be. Because I think, especially for my generation, the idea of success was a very black and white picture. You know what I mean? It was a certain amount of money. It was a marriage and kids and a house at a certain age. And it was going to college and doing all these things. There are so many more options now. There are so many more avenues to tap into what you're interested to. So I think for a lot of young people, it's also about designing a life that feels good for you, what feels right for you, and redefining success for you, because then you get obtainable and realistic milestones. And hitting those milestones builds confidence. And they don't have to be huge. We start small and we grow. But I think redefining success, creating some obtainable milestones, and then just making sure that you're celebrating your wins. To get up and to commit to go to school every day and to sit in a chair and listen. I can't sit in a chair and listen now as an adult. So to do these things are milestones that you are hitting off, and to do them for years on years on years, to graduate, to get a GED, to go into a trade school, to go into college, to start a career. These are huge milestones that not everybody meets. We need to be celebrating these as such.
And it's interesting because as a student, like you said, it is very black and white. Success in sports, you have to excel. In classroom, you have to get high grades. So if you don't do any of those things, you are a failure. And then I
Mhm.
think as an educator, I'm like, if we evaluated Jimi Hendrix and Picasso on a standardized test, we would have never known they were geniuses. If I evaluated Michael Jordan based on his baseball career, he wasn't that great of an athlete. It's like, I think it's funny because, like you said, we have these very specific identifications for success. When success, there's so many variances to that. And I had an example. I had a student who went from a D to my class to a C minus in a matter of 2 weeks. And I said, that's great. You went up. He said, but it's not that well. I said, no, but you can get higher. But it's like you increased literally 2 full grades in a matter of 2 weeks. That's incredible. And it's those, like you said, those little things, and those things need to be championed because that is a sign of success. Any growth, I don't care how slow, if you're moving forward, that's progress. Yeah,
Amen. And comparison is the thief of happiness.
it
I
is.
encourage young people all the time to focus on what you're doing, focus on your wins, and just being the best you can be. The goal is not the A plus in every class. The goal is whatever is the best for you.
I do need you to come to my class because you're reiterating so many things I try to tell them, but they are so sick of me hearing it. But when they hear you say it, they'll say, it's like when parents say, would you say this to my kid? Because the parents said it over and over again. And it's just, to me, there's not a more inspiring act than making a sacrificing something you love for the greater good. And it also breaks my heart that you had to sacrifice something. It should not require bravery to be yourself. There shouldn't be sacrifice in being your own true self. And that's what I tell a lot of people. I'm like, if kids have to be brave to be themselves, we're not doing our jobs as adults. Yeah, thank you again for everything you do. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate who you are. And it's impacting more people. And I am gonna find Miss Reynolds, and we are gonna track her down and get her a book, because that would change
Please.
her life. Yeah.
Oh, dude, I would appreciate
Text me
that.
the school, the town, and her full name, and I will find her.
Okay, I got you.
Thank you, brother. Enjoy, relax, enjoy your night, and I'll text you tomorrow.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks,
Appreciate you.
Mark. Okay, talk to you soon, brother.